The 31 pilgrims in the general prologue to Chaucer's Canterbury Tales represent a microcosm of medieval English society at the end of the 14th century, or at least a microcosm of all the people in society who would have the money and the time to do this kind of travel, to go on pilgrimage in the first place, which not everybody can do. The very highest orders of the society are not there. The major nobility do not appear in this poem, neither do the really poor, though there are a few servants of prosperous other pilgrims. The knight has his yeoman, who's not so far down in the world, but where the really poor people, they're not on pilgrimage at all. They are, and they're the majority of England. They are in the fields growing food. It's April. It's time to plant some crops. These 31 people are not planting crops. They are all prosperous in one way or another. You might notice there's a lot of discussion, and maybe to us a puzzling amount of discussion, about like the colors of these pilgrims' clothes. Why do we have why is there so much about she's got a red hat and he's got a white girdle? Because dyed clothing are still luxury goods. There are other luxury goods disguised: his dagger, hair rings, this pendant, the nun's little pendant with Amar Vincent Omnia written on it, and there's going to be a separate video about the nun and the monk. Those are luxury items, but so are the clothes. And the fact that clothes are colored is a luxury item. Dyed clothes are more expensive. You need to pay for the dye and for the work of making the dyes. The fact that the wife of Bath has this enormous hat and it's red, that she has all this red cloth and that red hose, that tells you just how much money she has. Everybody in this group is doing pretty well financially, so financially that a lot in the general prologue is about money, including my hosts, the host Harry Bailey's bet, his proposal of this game where everyone's going to tell 2 stories on the way to Canterbury and 2 stories on the way back, is really a bet. They are gambling on their religious pilgrimage. They're just gambling on who tells the best story, as judged by Harry Bailey. Of our 31 pilgrims, 2 are non-fictional, are real people. One is my host, Harry Bailey, the actual person who owned the actual Tabard Inn in this time period during Chaucer's lifetime. Did Harry Bailey actually ever go on this pilgrimage? No. The pilgrimage is fictional, and so are most of the pilgrims, except for Harry and our narrator, who is one Mr. Geoffrey Chaucer. Yeah, I'm sorry, Master Geoffrey Chaucer. Our Geoffrey Chaucer, Esquire. Our narrator, the one character in the general prologue who doesn't get described, the one who does all the describing, is an avatar of Geoffrey Chaucer himself, a fictionalized version of Chaucer who has his name, although, as I'll discuss in other videos, that narrator has an ironic position that is not the real Chaucer's take on things. This narrator praises everyone he sees. Aren't they all so wonderful? Well, maybe not. Who are the pilgrims? We start at the top. The knight is the bottom end of the landed nobility, the warrior elite that had traditionally run England. And he's as high as the nobility gets in this poem, right? In this on the Squire. We have a number of prosperous church people and less prosperous church people, but certainly the nun, the monk, and the friar are all actually doing very well for themselves, and everybody can at least afford to go on pilgrimage. The parson and the clerk are poorer. Other members of the church, like the summoner and the pardoner, are really bottom feeders. They're minor figures in a kind of church bureaucracy. They've got money, but they're not high status in the world. Why are these church people so high status? Because in this period, the Catholic Church, which isn't called the Catholic Church yet because there's nobody in Western Christianity except this church, owned approximately 1/3 of all the land in England. That's right. In a society where most of the wealth is measured in farmland, where most of what England produces comes out of the ground, not out of the shops or the workshops or the mines, the Catholic Church owns a full third. So when the monk can afford his fancy horses and hounds, and the prioress is extremely nicely dressed, that is not entirely a surprise. We have some rich, and those are people who are very rich despite the fact they've taken vows of poverty. The parson is not rich. He has, but partly because the narrative tells us he has avoided all the many, many chances a priest in England in this period would have to be corrupt and make more money. He's just too good a person. The clerk is not wealthy because, well, he's an academic. He's put learning ahead of profit. I feel you, Clerk of Oxenford. I feel you. Then we have a large number of people who are from a kind of prosperous middle class of England tradespeople, skilled craftsmen, and merchants. One of them is the merchant, the sergeant of laws, a lawyer, the wife of Bath, who owns a prosperous and very profitable cloth-making industry, which she has inherited a business from one of her many previous husbands. Alison goes through husbands pretty quickly. The wife of Bath is going to get a lot of time of her own later in this unit. You should notice there isn't a large merchant class in England, but they're there, they're real, and they're making money. Part of what happens in the 400 years that our class covers is a rise and increase in both the wealth and power of the English merchant class as England transitions from a farm economy, an agrarian economy, to something closer to the kind of commercial and mercantile economy that's familiar to us, and gets us up to the 18th century and to 1776, frankly. Okay, you can see these people are doing very well. Even the shipman, even the miller, they're not all honest. Many of them have cheated in various ways. The narrator is remarkably frank about the kinds of dishonesty many of his friends practice, but he loves them all. The method here, and I'll repeat it again in other parts of this unit, the narrator works through ironic praise. Everybody on this trip is so wonderful, aren't they great? Let me tell you how wonderful they are. But then some of the ways in which they're wonderful are things that are obviously to almost any reader, and to Chaucer himself, not wonderful. Isn't the miller great? He steals so much grain. There's going to be a short video on the miller as well. Where are these people going? They're going on pilgrimage. This is a religious practice, a Christian religious practice, especially practiced by what we can now call the Roman Catholic Church. That's about going to religious sites for reasons of veneration, of religious devotion. The big number one pilgrimage site is, of course, Jerusalem. For these people, and you actually get, if you want to know all the sites, most of the sites, you can just look at the list of all the places the wife of Bath has been. She's hit all the heavy hitters, sometimes multiple times. So she's been to Jerusalem, she's been to Rome, the administrative center of the Roman Church, the Catholic Church, the Western Christianity as it was before the Reformation, before the Protestants showed up. And she's also been to local sites. They're going to Canterbury, the shrine of a major English national saint, Thomas Becket, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury. He got into a kind of political tiff with the king for his troubles. He got murdered in the cathedral on Christmas Day. So, bad look for the king. St. Thomas becomes St. Thomas. And the pilgrims are going there to kind of pray at his shrine and get blessed by the presence of the dead saint. Now I need to talk briefly, but they're also doing this as travel, as fun. This is kind of what you have in the English Middle Ages for travel opportunity. There's a reason the wife of Bath has been so many places. She loves to travel. She is genuinely doing it for religious purposes. She thinks she's getting a spiritual benefit from this. She's looking for blessings from God, but she also really likes travel. This is a vacation, and they're taking one. If they weren't on vacation too, they wouldn't be having their game of telling each other stories and betting at dinner on the best story that gets told on the way to and from. They want to be entertained. It's not a choice. Is this serious religion or is this entertainment? It is both. It is both. And it is for Chaucer too. Chaucer's out to use these pilgrims to tell a whole bunch of different kinds of stories. Serious, frivolous, funny, very sad, religiously uplifting, sexual, and crass. All of them. Okay, while we're on the topic, a quick word about religion. Religion is going to be important to most of our writers from most of the unit. The religious changes that England underwent from the 14th to the 18th century were enormous and caused a lot of other social upheaval and progress and terrible things. There will be more about religion. I want to say here, my descriptions of religious practices and beliefs in this period are strictly historical for your information to understand the work better. I have no interest in talking you into any particular religious position. I have no interest in talking you out of any religious position. I have no interest in sharing any of my religious positions with you. If I tell you about a religious position, it's because Geoffrey Chaucer or Edmund Spenser or John Milton or Jonathan Swift held that position, and it's useful to understand where they're coming from. Neither do I want to deride anybody's religious beliefs. If I describe some religious practices or beliefs in a kind of comic shorthand now and then, that's much the same as what I do for poetic techniques. Please bear with me. So, it's the 1380s, 1390s. Everybody in Western Europe who's a Christian, which is almost everybody, is what we would now call Roman Catholic. What we see in the general prologue already is a large number of religious practices that are going to be thrown out by the Protestants and either abandoned or minimized by the Catholics themselves. When do the Protestants show up? The 1500s. It's more than 100 years away. We're all Roman. We're still Roman Catholic in England. We don't even know there's a name. Are any of us Jews? No. Edward III expelled the Jews. So technically there are none. In fact, there are a few, but they're keeping pretty quiet. Pilgrimage is a Catholic practice about going to particular places. The veneration of saints that goes with it. You can only have a pilgrimage to the shrine of St. Thomas if you have a shrine to a St. Thomas. Protestantism is going to do without the kind of religious practices around the saints. Chaucer and his pilgrims believe that instead of just praying to God, they can pray to various holy Christians who have died, lived holy lives, and who have become saints, and therefore have special powers to intervene on your behalf. Don't just pray to the big guy, pray to his entourage. It's like having a friend at City Hall, right? Jesus is very busy. I'm going to pray to Jesus, but I'm also going to pray to my local homeboy, St. Thomas of Canterbury. I'm English, he's English, he'll understand. Maybe he'll put a word in for me with the big guy. That's kind of how it works. And yes, I've already begun making light of religious practice. Not because that religious practice is silly, but because I'm trying to make the exposition move quickly. That also includes the veneration of saints' relics. Things they've touched, parts of their body. The partner is selling fake religious relics. He's got a piece of pillowcase that he'll claim is the veil of St. Mary, of Jesus' mother, which is indistinguishable from a pillowcase. He's got other kinds of not particularly valuable crap that he is selling as priceless religious artifacts to suckers, because the partner is a religious con man. He's also got a whole bunch of bones in there, like chicken bones. He's going to pass off those chicken bones to unwitting suckers as pieces of the skeletons of dead Christian saints that are therefore holy and good luck to have and bring spiritual blessing, and he's going to sell them for money. Is the partner a nice guy? No, not really. Neither is the summoner, who is a kind of religious court official who will take bribes to let people get away with things. What is the partner? The partner is the last person on our food chain here. Is the last person we get to before the host and the undescribed Geoffrey Chaucer. What the partner is doing is selling indulgences. He is selling for money forgiveness for sins for the purchaser or for the purchaser's dead family members. Maybe you think your great Uncle John did some terrible things. Maybe you think he didn't go straight to heaven. This Christianity has a heaven, a hell, and a purgatory, which is a kind of temporary county jail version of hell where you pay short term, you're punished short term before you move on to heaven. And you can pray for people to get them out of purgatory, and you can also pay for other people to pray to get them out of purgatory. What the partner is selling is indulgences, is remission of sins, maybe yours, maybe your beloved dead relatives. and is he doing this as a scam? No. This is official church policy. This is part of how the church finances itself. This is one of the many things the Protestants are going to be very angry about and want to get rid of. So the partner is both involved in selling these packets of forgiveness of your sins or your relative sins, which might sound like a scam to some of you, but is official policy. And he's selling fake religious relics, which is totally a scam under all circumstances. He's doing both those things. Now we're on the topic. What is Chaucer's position on religion? Complicated, and it's not to be oversimplified. Now, these and the church members we meet, the nun, the priest, the friar, the partner, and the summoner certainly, are all in their various ways corrupt. The clerk and the parson, less so. Chaucer is clearly criticizing the corruption. The Catholic Church in the 14th century is significantly corrupt for a lot of reasons. One reason is it has a third of all the wealth in the country, and with wealth you attract people who are interested in wealth and not in spirituality. It is a great idea to give a spiritual religious group intent on good works all of this wealth, money, and farmland. But that means that people are interested in the wealth, money, and farmland, but not so interested in spiritual missions show up. The nun, the priest, the friar are those people. It's also the case that England in the 14th century, in the 1300s, is still very much a feudal aristocracy run by inherited landowners, and those can be who are interested in keeping their own power. One of the things, because the church is so rich and powerful, the upper levels of church leadership are seated with the younger sons and daughters of the aristocracy. The church is not, at this moment, fully in opposition to the powers that be, but a branch of it. It's not like, hey, we've got the noblemen, but then we've got the church who fights the power for us. No, because the church leadership, the bishops, the abbots, the prioresses, the abbesses, the abbots, they are from the nobility themselves. And they're there for the money and the power and the politics. And the nice horses. Who can blame them? Martin Luther can blame them for sure. Now, does this mean that Geoffrey Chaucer is against the Catholic Church? It does not. When we get to that retraction at the end of our reading, he means it. He is, on some level, on very real levels, Chaucer is a believing Christian who believes in his church. He is not a Protestant or an atheist. Those positions aren't really available to him yet. They're not historically one of the choices he could have. It might be comfortable to you as a Protestant or an atheist or someone who's simply not thrilled with Christianity as a religion to enjoy his critique of these Christian religious figures. Chaucer's own position that he's a believing Christian, a loyal son of the church more and less, though he admits himself to be a sinner, who is mocking the corruption that is too prevalent to really be ignored in the Catholic Church of his time.